Welcome in, everyone, to the Voice of College Football, and leave it to Michigan football to interrupt my vacation. Yes, the Maize and Blue have done it again. We do appreciate everyone being here. We'll get to your comments and questions there in the chat. We'll, of course, review the NCAA ruling that has been announced on this fine Friday of August 15th. And again, welcome in. Leave those comments and questions. We will take your calls as well. We, of course, have discussed this topic zillions of times for zillions of shows, for zillions of hours, going back to, I believe, October of 2023 is, I believe, the start of all this becoming public. So again, we will leave the call-in line here, and I'm going to start out by leaving the call-in line there in the chat. So that's available to you. We are going to read through the ESPN.com article, and then I will make my talking points. I've not thought this through. I have not in any way prepared anything. I have not made my own determination on how just the ruling is. I will make that determination as I read the article, and based on the countless shows, countless content and hours that have been dedicated to this topic. And I am certainly glad that it's finally behind us to some degree, although I'm sure that the debate will rage on for the eternity of college football, and certainly through the lifetimes of Michigan fans and their rival fans as to the legitimacy of a 2023 national championship. I'm sure, again, that will go on endlessly. But we will, of course, past this day, focus on the 2025 college football season. So here we are. This is the Pete Thamel and Dan Wetzel rendering of the verdict and the summation of such. Michigan received a series of fines that could eclipse $30 million, but avoided punitive penalties such as a postseason ban or the vacating of victories, including during the 2023 national championship season, as the NCAA Division I Committee on Infractions ruled on the Wolverines' advanced scouting case Friday. The NCAA also imposed an additional game suspension for Coach Jerome Moore, which will be served for the first game of the 2026 season. Moore is expected to serve a 2-game suspension in the upcoming season, which ESPN reported in May that the university proposed to self-impose. He also received a 2-year show cause penalty. The 2025 games he will miss will be the Wolverines' 3rd and 4th of the season, at home against Central Michigan, on the road against, that should say, Nebraska. Central Michigan and Nebraska. The 2026 opener is expected to be against Western Michigan and Frankfurt, Germany. The NCAA committee also levied an 8-year show cause penalty for former Michigan staffer Connor Stalions, the infamous one, and a 10-year show cause for former coach Jim Harbaugh, who is now in the NFL with the Los Angeles Chargers. Those essentially act as barriers to schools hiring them in the future. Harbaugh's new show cause penalty will not begin until after he serves a current 4-year show cause that runs through 2028 from a previous NCAA case. Later Friday, Michigan issued a statement saying it would appeal the NCAA ruling. I was not aware of that. Okay, this will go on and on and on and on, even beyond this. We appreciate the work of the Committee on Infractions, the statement read, but respectfully, in a number of instances, the decision makes fundamental errors in interpreting NCAA bylaws, and it includes a number of conclusions that are directly contrary to the evidence or lack of evidence in the record. We will appeal this decision to ensure a fair result, and we will consider all other options. Should have thought about that before you started cheating. So the fair results would be actually playing the games under fair conditions in the past. Now, really, there are only 2 results that I can think of off the top of my head of this appeal. One is to show the public the NCAA took this too far. Our sign stealing was not as detrimental to the results of these games and was not as egregious as the NCAA concludes to. So it's a PR move, number one, but the NCAA will have to retract some of the penalties. And then point number two would be the money. Obviously, if they appeal and they win part of the appeal, they pull back some of that money. Those would be the two reasons that I believe that Michigan football and the University of Michigan would appeal this decision. Number one, PR. It shows that, hey, yes, this is too egregious of a penalty. This was not as big a deal as it is ruled to be. And we have proven that by our appeal. And we're not just taking this. And then secondly, we can get some money back. And by retrieving money, which is obviously going to be when numbers are placed on these damages, when numbers are placed on these penalties, people put the numbers in their mind. And if they see that the NCAA implemented a $20 million fine on Michigan and they lower it to $15 million, that will be a victory for Michigan. And the final conclusion to this, the final statement, the final story to be written will be that Michigan won the appeal, and therefore that will soften the blow in the public court of debate. In the public forum, Michigan will have the final victory. And the last note of this on anyone's minds concerning a decision to be made was that Michigan won. So those would be the two reasons that I can think of why Michigan would appeal this, because they're not going to, these show causes are inconsequential for Harbaugh and the coaches that have moved on to the NFL. Sharon Moore, it's a 2-year show cause. Michigan's not that concerned. They're not going to bat for Sharon Moore on an appeal. It's about money and it's about public perception and PR, this appeal. The size of the fines is expected to be considerable, although an exact amount will not be immediately available. The fines include $50,000 initial levy, 10% of the football budget, 10% of the cost of football scholarships for the 2025 season, and the loss of all postseason competition revenue shared for 25 and 26 seasons. That sum could easily eclipse $30 million. Though there are variables on how much teams get from football postseason revenue, sources expect that number alone, based on past Big Ten income and projections, to be more than $20 million. Some of that will depend on the performance of Michigan and of the Big Ten. The football budget in 2024 was more than $70 million, which means the amount is likely to be at least $7 million for that part of the fine, depending on updated budgets. So this is where we rely on someone knowledgeable concerning all of these revenue statistics to put these together, to map it all out and give us some reasonable estimate within a couple $1 million of how much Michigan will be penalized in total. Separately, former assistant coach Denard Robinson was hit with a 3-year show cause penalty for a combined role in recruiting violations that included, according to the NCAA, providing limited inducements to a prospect and his family, and then failing to, quote, respond to the notice of allegations or attend the hearing. The true scope and scale of the sign stealing scheme, including the competitive advantage it afforded, will never be fully known due to individuals' intentional destruction and withholding of materials and information. I would like to check something on our feed just to make sure we are loud and clear and everyone's here and can hear us. All right, just wanted to make sure. Let's go back to that paragraph in particular. This is interesting. Very telling paragraph, I believe we're coming up on right here. Quote, the true scope and scale of the sign stealing scheme, including the competitive advantage it afforded, will never be fully known. Thank you. I've only said that 1 million times. Others as well. Due to individuals' intentional destruction and withholding of materials and information. So that's a good point. Of course, we've talked about that many times, but also just the determination of the sign stealing and its impact directly to the field has been debated. But the intent was clear. The intent was clear to gain a substantial competitive advantage. That's the only reason anyone cheats at anything. I don't care if somebody turned around to grab a drink and you stole a checker piece or moved it a spot. Whatever, the only reason anyone cheats is to gain a substantial competitive advantage. Norman Bay, the chief hearing officer for the NCAA Committee on Infractions panel, said at a news conference Friday. So from where I stand on this and understand, I may have a different and in the minority perspective on this, and it has nothing to do with my fandom. It has nothing to do with this being college football, this being Michigan. It could be Kansas and Iowa State involved in this from a rivalry standpoint. Has nothing to do with any of that. Has to do with my worldview. Has to do with my worldview. That yes, if you cheated, then basically that means that the competition on the field is tainted and unfair. And then the second part of this that should be obvious to all, that I don't hear anybody else talking about, and I have for quite some time, or at least once it went from 2021 was when Connor Stallions was hired and started to work for Michigan football, 2021 through 2022 and halfway through 2023 before he was caught and fired and all of this broke, that for 2.5 seasons, you don't allow a staffer to cheat and bring information to the table unless it's effective. If it was not effective, then why would you use it? That doesn't make any sense to me. And then something we may find out in reading this article, and probably most of you are more informed on today's ruling at this exact moment than I am. What we will find out, and another key component in all of this for me, is that, yes, Jim Harbaugh is responsible for this situation, but that doesn't mean he's at fault. That doesn't mean he's compliant. That doesn't mean he initiated this, but he is at fault, just like myself or anyone who owns a company would be responsible for any nefarious actions that are taken by anyone in the company. That would be my responsibility as the owner of the company. However, I may be completely clueless to the situation. That means I don't have control. That general term given by the NCAA, institutional control or lack thereof, being an issue. But what I have wanted to know since day one was the knowledge of cheating, from one end of the spectrum, rogue Connor Stallions acting on his own, covering up this information, presenting it in such a way that the rest of the coaching staff on the defensive side was unaware or just simply took him as being a genius at what he did, versus all the way through the spectrum to the point that Jim Harbaugh knew about it, maybe initiated it, maybe knew that the Connor Stallions was expert at this and said, go get him, boy. Where do we stand on that spectrum? That is huge to me. That is a huge component to this as far as I make a judgment on the egregious nature of this. Quote, you don't put together a network of individuals called the KGB that records what they call dirty film, where the cost of doing this is in the tens of thousands of dollars over 3 seasons, unless you intend to gain a substantial competitive advantage. I'm sorry, Michigan fan, you cannot argue this. You cannot argue this in any way. You can make an argument. Your best argument is that the cheating stopped midway through 2023 and you proceeded to win a national championship and proceeded not to lose a game. That is Michigan football's best argument. That is the best argument of the Michigan football fan. Another reasonable argument to this for the Michigan football fan is to go back and say, all of this was legal and under the rules and fine to execute prior to whatever the year was, 1991, 92, 93, somewhere in there. But the reason this was taken off the table and was put into the rule book as being a violation was because of a cost consideration to the schools that could apparently not afford to do this type of advanced scouting. So this type of advanced scouting was taken off the board due to the determination by the NCAA that not everyone could fairly compete at this level from a financial standpoint. Not that there's anything wrong with it. We could argue all day, and I would remove myself from this argument, actually, if we were going to argue, is this type of scouting moral and ethical, or is it not? I don't think there's a clear side to stand on one way or the other. This is not a clear right or wrong in terms of the advanced scouting in and of itself, aside from the rules. I could point to other violations in NCAA football history that I could make the same statement. It's not a moral issue. It's not an ethical issue, even beyond the rules. If we take the rules out of play and say, is this an ethical issue? Advanced scouting. It's advanced scouting. And we could have an argument all day and I would remove myself from that argument because I don't think there's a right or wrong in regards to simply the advanced scouting. But then you apply a rule and then it becomes wrong. It becomes a violation of the competition that you, as the University of Michigan, have agreed to as a member of the NCAA and the Big Ten Conference to abide by said rule. I think it's moronic beyond belief that Ohio State football players were penalized and the school and the program for trading championship awards for tattoos. In and of itself, that is not an ethical issue or a moral issue. It's not right, it's not wrong. But once there was a rule applied to it that you cannot do that, they agreed to abide by the rules of competition in the NCAA. Therefore, that's not cheating, that's a rules violation. There are two different. There is a difference there as well between cheating and violating a rule. Those aren't necessarily the same thing. All right, and again, we have left the call-in line here in the chat. So I'm fascinated by this paragraph here. And again, I'm going to take it from the top here. Quote, the true scope and scale of the sign stealing scheme, including the competitive advantage it afforded, will never be fully known due to individuals' intentional destruction and withholding of materials and information, and also just from a football standpoint, determining the impact. But the intent was clear, to gain a substantial competitive advantage. Norman Bay, the chief hearing officer for the NCAA Committee on Infractions panel, stated, you don't put together a network of individuals that records what they call dirty film, where the cost of doing this is in the tens of thousands of dollars over 3 seasons, unless you intend to gain a substantial competitive advantage. That can't be debated. In the sign stealing case, Michigan and its coaches and staffers were charged with 6 level 1 violations, which are the most serious. The decision to fine the school heavily but not issue a penalty, such as a postseason ban, indicates a shift in NCAA enforcement rulings away from postseason prohibitions. This is a good point right here. because I saw a number of misguided, I will be kind, misguided individuals on the internet today comparing this conclusion, this ruling by the NCAA to previous rulings. You cannot make that determination that, oh, Michigan did not receive a postseason ban, therefore this has not been ruled as egregious as previous violations of the NCAA. No, there's clearly been a shift by the NCAA in determining, finally, it took decades and decades and decades to determine this, that you do not penalize people who were not involved. You do your very best, and it's impossible to cut this line perfectly, impossible, but they could do a much better job than they have done historically of penalizing the right people. So they are making an attempt here to penalize the people involved and not the student athletes and the coaches currently running the football program. Although ironically, the head football coach is part of this. All right, I do believe we've got a couple of calls coming in. Let's get right to it. Ben Baller's here. Ben, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. What a weak punishment, honestly. I'm surprised by the punishment. I mean, I'm sure you heard it. Even was it Akron this year got a postseason ban for bad grades?
Yes.
I mean, look, I'm surprised by the punishment. I really am. I mean, Michigan's already appealing it. Did you see that?
Yes. We just talked about that.
So,
yep.
Okay, yeah. I'm surprised,
so for me,
man.
there are two reasons to appeal. There's two reasons to appeal, because if you win the appeal, then the last bullet point to this entire saga is that Michigan won back an appeal and therefore proved to the NCAA and everyone else that this is not as bad of an issue as previously ruled. So you plant that in the minds of the public forum. And number two, you obviously make back money. So those would be the two reasons why I believe that they would appeal.
It's also a win-win to appeal because with the way they have it set up, the appeal, they can't add new punishments. They can only modify the punishments that the COI already gave or remove punishments. So it's a win-win to appeal if you're the school. They're not able to add new punishments, and they can really only modify the ones they have. So I don't know why you wouldn't appeal. Yeah. So I mean, were you surprised? Were you surprised by the punishments at all?
No, the people I know that I believe are tapped in, not that they're insiders, but people both inside this network and other Michigan people that I come in contact with on a regular basis and talk to, pretty much had this pegged fairly close. So I trusted them.
Yeah, I'm on the same page. I'm not saying I know anybody, but I'm on board.
What is surprising you?
I'm not surprised because I'm on the same page as you, because I listen to certain people that were saying the same thing.
Yes.
But for a lot of you probably know the certain channels I'm talking about. There are plenty of channels that claim to be like, oh, we know, we have sources that say it's going to be a postseason ban and vacating wins and lifetime show causes, all kinds of these things. And I think those people are surprised. I think there's a lot of people that are surprised due to that faction of reporting, which honestly I think was just for clicks, obviously, at this point.
So whether we're talking about, and I'll put some names out there, and I could put out some others, but whether that's Steve Dace, whether that's Isaiah Hull that we just had on, and I would advise everyone to watch our discussion with Isaiah Hull that we just posted the other day, and it had nothing to do with this. It was all Michigan football prep for this season with Isaiah Hull's a first-rate guy, and then our Michigan guys, TJ and John, except for a dollar amount. And the dollar amounts I heard were fairly close to this from all those sources and others. Everything else lined up exactly, that Sharon Moore would still have the 2-game suspension that was self-imposed, but that it would be added to, that Harbaugh would have something in the range of a long show cause and the other coaches that are now in the NFL, and that there would be a large monetary, ruling to this as well, but that postseason would not be touched, and previous wins and national championships would not be touched.
Yeah, exactly. I think this goes in line, and I think this is more proof of this. They're becoming a more pro-style league. But I mean, this is just a further example. This is what the pros do. This is how they punish in the pros. They punish by fines and suspensions. I am surprised by the suspension. I'll say that. The additional suspension is a 1-game suspension next year. That's nothing. What is that? That isn't really a punishment. And the show cause, I mean, the way that they wrote the show cause in the actual, that's not even a show cause. So it's a show cause, but he's not prohibited from coaching and recruiting. That's what it says.
The additional game is almost like the NCAA saying it's going to look slightly bad if we just accept what you gave us. So we're going to show that we are the ones that have the final say. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I think them doing it for next year though is just weak. Why not do it for this year?
Yeah.
You know, you made it easy. Like, okay, we'll take that. Well, so he's suspended for Western Michigan next year? Like, that's nothing.
Yeah.
And you know, the appeal, the appeal, like I said, it's a win-win, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, I get it. Do you believe what they say in their statement, that they feel like there's no real evidence, that they're just going off of opinion? Do you think that there's any basis for that?
Where did they state that they're just
That's
going
in
off
Michigan's statement today about the appeal. They say there's no factual evidence. Everything in here is based off conjecture and opinion, pretty much.
Yeah, I did not get to that part in it. Of course, this is not based just on opinion. Well, they have evidence.
Oh, I mean, obviously, yeah, I agree. I mean, Connor Stanley he is who he is. But yeah, they feel like there's not. They basically, I guess, what they're saying is that they don't have any real physical evidence. They're basically doing it off of hearsay. But let's be honest, guys. I mean, I doubt there's any. Maybe there are Michigan fans who feel this way. I don't feel this way. Connor Stanley's. I mean, he did what he did. I mean, have you talked to anyone that still tries to dispute that?
No, I don't know of anyone in the right mind that is disputing that. And obviously, there's a paper trail in a number of directions. So I can't understand the statement about no evidence or a lack of evidence, because, you know, it's been a long time since we came across, and that was all released about, you know, the receipts and the emails and all the paper trail of him organizing this.
Well, to be fair, and I mean, they didn't really list any evidence. They said, like, you know, the $35,000 he spent on this, whatever. But if I remember correctly, right, it was the Venmo transactions was really what it was. I haven't seen any physical evidence personally. I think he did it. There's no question he did it. But the question becomes, what is the? I want to see the actual evidence. Do you know if after the appeal's done, did they actually release like actual evidence, or did they just release the summary, like what they have now? Because right now it's just a summary, like, oh, he spent $35,000 and he did this and that. I want to see actual documented evidence.
I don't think that comes out. Somebody may be able to, that's more knowledgeable about those type of legal situations than I, but I'm not aware of actual documentation coming out.
Yeah, because I think that would clear it up more, because Michigan seems pretty confident they don't have any like actual physical evidence. It's basically just hearsay mostly, and the Venmo. Obviously, you got the Venmo thing, but.
And when I say about official documentation, I mean official, meaning it's being released officially and presented to the public officially. It will come out in bits and pieces, I'm sure, in the future.
Yeah, because if you read, have you gone to the actual NCAA website that's posted it? Have you read? I'm assuming you read that. That posted their findings and all that.
In the past.
No, the one they released today.
I did not read anything today. No.
Yeah. So okay. So basically, no, you good. I'll say some of the things. Basically, what they said was that they're really punishing the intention. They're punishing the intention to gain an advantage. but all the actual evidence they said they feel was destroyed. For example, Harbaugh never gave up his phone. They said that Stallions threw his phone in a pond. That was one of the things. They said he threw his phone in a pond, and they were never able to recover his phone. Things like that. You should read it. It's very interesting. They said Connor Stallions referred to his scouts as the KGB.
Yeah, so we just went through that information, not to the extent that you just presented, like the throwing the phone in the lake or whatever, and Harbaugh refusing, which we had heard that in the past, though, Harbaugh refusing to give up evidence or cooperate in any way. But we just went through the portion of the article released by ESPN about the KGB naming, and then also basically yes. And I thought that this was the most fascinating part of this that I've come across yet. And I spent a lot of time on this, Michigan man. Quote, the true scope and scale of the sign stealing scheme, including the competitive advantage it afforded, will never be fully known to individuals' intentional destruction and withholding of materials and information. But the intent, yes, like you were saying, was clear and blah, blah, blah. He talks about KGB, naming of individuals, dirty film, tens of thousands of dollars being spent over 3 seasons, and then use the term twice, intending to gain a substantial competitive advantage. And Michigan man, you still there? Okay, we will move on. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. We will get through your comments and questions. If you have anything that you specifically want me to address, please leave a super chat so it shows up. I do somewhat apologize to a certain extent because many of you folks have counted on me through the years when there's a hiring, firing, NCAA ruling of such, anything like that. Nick Saban retires, Mark D'Antonio he retires, whatever the case might be. Big story that we come on here live. But Michigan football has interrupted my short weekend vacation. So thank you, Michigan football. All right, we got George on the line. George showing up. George, what's going on?
Hi, Mark.
Hey, George.
How you doing?
I am doing great myself.
I think something that's being missed in the background here is, I'm sure if we look into this deep enough, somehow it's SMU and Miami's fault. So I hope they just stop investigating now or they get in trouble. I made that up, but that's funny.
Well done, George. I must admit,
they both got the death penalty.
This
both
is
got
a compliment, George, that you've been funnier in the past. That's a compliment.
Exactly. That's all I could come up with on a spur of the moment. I haven't been around lately because I'm in a process of moving. It's a real pain in the ass, isn't it? Moving.
It is. We don't like moving. George, if you can comment on the Michigan situation here. Otherwise, I'm going to need to move on.
How many?
That's why we're here.
I think it's all been said, but how many days until football? Because I've been out of the loop.
Well, we've got a few football games next Saturday. So we are only 8 days away from Iowa State, Kansas State, and then some other decent games, like 3 games. And then we got the full array, of course, the next Saturday. So that's 15 days from week 1. Well, there are Thursday night games. So in the next 2 weeks, we got football.
I can't believe it worked out this way, but I have a chance of being in my new apartment in my easy chair with a beer ready for the kickoff. I just need it to speed up a little bit, the home inspections and all that kind of stuff, you know?
Yes. Well, George, this unfortunately is not the time to be discussing your move here.
No. That's not what I called about.
Okay.
No, that's not what I called about.
Okay.
I wanted to talk about Michigan.
All right.
As far as Michigan goes, as far as what Michigan is going on there, we have to remember that the master said, if you don't forgive others, he won't forgive you either. So I think everybody should just drop this shit and move on. It's almost time for kickoff. Who cares? Come on. Oh, well, I'm sorry. Apparently
Well, there's forgiveness, George, but there's also something called justice. So in the midst of forgiving a murderer, which should be done, we should be forgiving that individual. They still have to pay the consequences of their actions or fill in the blank of the violation.
But their punishment is like a their punishment's like a joke. Everybody's laughing about it. So,
well, I guess $30 million
Isn't everybody laughing?
The rest of it's a joke. Yes, the penalties unleashed against these individuals, a joke, against the program, a joke, against these games. These games were apparently legitimate, although it's like any other ruling by the NCAA. It's contradictory because they are penalizing all this cheating to say this was intentional, this is a horrible thing, but the legitimacy of the games still stands. So
all I know for sure is if SMU or Miami would have done this, they would have lost 20 scholarships over 3 years and the $20 million penalty and no playoff. And so this is funny, you know?
Well,
or Michigan.
I'm not going to really make a judgment call there, but a lot of people are right there with you, George, believe that since this is a blue blood that they got slapped on the wrist. I don't know.
Hey, after the show, can we get together? I want to come up with a gadget where we intercept their headphone talking, what they're doing on the headphones, and direct it to our head coach on the sideline. Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah, I would not be the best person to get involved in that. My technology knowledge is slight.
These are universities. You know somebody's working on that shit. Somebody's sitting there with a little microphone pointed at the guy. And whatever. It's electronic. It's digital. The AI could tell you how to do it. We're in trouble. They're going to go back to writing with pencil and paper. This is not doable. Anything electronic and digital can be intercepted. What if BlackRock had a big? What if BlackRock had a big?
Appreciate the call, George. I'm moving the show to 10 Eastern starting Monday. So next Monday, join us anytime.
10 Eastern. Okay.
10 Eastern.
And I do get notifications, so I'll be there.
10
Thank
Eastern,
you. Bye, guys.
Night or post game. Yes. Thanks,
all right.
George.
I'm ready for football. Here we go.
All right. We need to talk about this Michigan situation and not other things. Again, as I just mentioned to George, we'll be back with the College Football Show. Maybe we call it the College Football Show late night. That will start Monday, 10 p.m. Eastern time with all of you. 10 p.m. Eastern time. We'll give it a go for this football season at 10 Eastern. That's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I must be insane. So don't be surprised if you see a fill-in host from time to time. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, meaning Thursday, Friday, Saturday post-game or 10 p.m. Eastern time. I'll make a judgment call on the consequence of that game. The popularity of that game will either go post-game or be here at 10 Eastern. Next call here at the Voice of College Football.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Just trying to see what's the post on everything now that these punishments has been handed down.
Yes. So what's your question about the punishments?
Well, does it seem to fit the crime for your audience? Does the punishment fit the crime?
Well, for the audience, you'd have to look at all the comments that are being made. For me personally, I think it's a complicated situation. Based on my years and years and years of watching football, covering football, and my evaluation of Michigan cheating, which they clearly did. There's no debating that. They violated the rules for 2.5 years. I don't believe that they won a national championship based on cheating. But they did cheat. They, in fact, cheated. And to me, the most important aspects of this case is, number one, how much of the coaching staff knew that there was cheating. So was this just a rogue knucklehead Connor Stallions acting alone? or did the entire staff know about it or even initiate it? That would be the other end of the spectrum. That's one question that is yet to be answered and maybe never will completely. The other point in all this is obviously they would have stopped him if this was not effective. This was obviously an effective form of cheating where they would have stopped him. They would have continued to pour their resources for 2.5 years into this.
When you say stop him, if they don't think that that's the reason why they're getting the advantage, what is there to stop? Like, there's a lot of factors that go into a team winning. You can't look at just one situation and say that's the reason why we're
there's right. So talent.
So right. So what you're saying is them knowing that is why they continue to allow him to do it, because they knew that they were getting the advantage of that. But
let me phrase it this way. If you're the head coach of a football team at this level, like these guys are paranoid about time and about wasting time, wasting resources, and being focused on only doing what results in winning. And if you had a staffer that you just hired and he was running around doing whatever, even if it was within the rules or outside the rules, and would be bringing this information to you, and it was not valuable, it was not productive, you would stop him from doing this, and you would say, enough's enough. You've done this for 3 weeks. It's not helping us. Enough of that. You need to be doing this.
But wouldn't they have found that? Like what you're saying, as far as the coaching, like, wouldn't they have found evidence of him relaying those things to coaches like Sharon Moore?
Well, we didn't have that evidence.
Right, but when they looked at his messages, it wasn't nothing found that.
Well, I'm not positive about that.
That was when they brought the messages back up and they retrieved them. If there was something there,
we got to see like 10 messages out of like 300 or something like that.
But it was being investigated, so like they were looking at that. So if it was something there, wouldn't that be something that they would have brought up?
Well, if you are holding to your point here, the NCAA committee itself said that, and said this 3 different times, the chief hearing officer of the NCAA committee on infractions, 3 different times, that there was clear intent to gain a substantial competitive advantage.
Well, we know that every team is looking to gain a competitive advantage based on whatever it is you do.
Well, obviously, yes, but it's
so
not
like that's not like a.
But the NCAA is not investigating you studying more film to gain a competitive advantage, because that's not against the rules. This is being investigated because it's against the rules.
But in scouting, like, that's what you scout and send somebody out to decipher signs for, like, to get a competitive advantage. Like, that's not a thing that's unusual for anybody to do. That's not like an isolated thing. Like, oh, Michigan is the only school that had a guy that was out there looking for signs.
Yeah, to get a but we're not talking about other schools. We're talking about the University.
I'm saying but that's in the scope of things. Like, if everybody has a guy doing that, and then you're picking just a Michigan.
Who else is the guy doing this? You think Michigan would be the only school out of 136 that would be caught?
No, I don't even think. Well, we know with Michigan, as far as when people say they get caught, somebody delivered that information. Like, it wasn't like the NCAA went out there and found Michigan doing it.
Well, that's
another school delivered it. They said this is what's going. So that's not
that
when you say getting caught. That's somebody. Right. So if you go into anybody, you could look at anybody's program and find something and deliver the information, and the NCAA can go and investigate and say, yeah, that school is doing that.
Yeah. No? We can't say that. You cannot definitively say that about every program.
No, I can't. But that's not something that, like, isn't there.
Okay.
Like
If you're making a
everybody
statement,
is playing great line. Like there is great line.
yes.
If somebody go into it, like if somebody wants to dive into anybody's program, you can find something on every program. If you have somebody
number one, we
delivering
don't
that
know
information.
Number one, we don't know that. Number two, are there programs out there that are currently cheating or have cheated in the past that did not get caught? Yes. What's that have to do with this?
Because y'all say they got caught, but if somebody if
They
Jim
did get
if
caught.
you telling right somebody gave that information.
That's been the impetus of any NCAA investigation, that somebody turned in somebody else.
So it wasn't just that in some in investigations that they just got caught doing what they were doing. Not someone delivered it to their front door and said, "Hey, we think this is what's going on over here. Look into this."
If you look at the history of NCAA violations, they usually involve recruiting. Well, recruiting of players usually involves a multitude of schools. So the schools that lost out on that player know what was going down. And so they can say, because they're off scot-free because they didn't sign the player, and can say, boom, look at what they did. And they gave player X, Y, and Z, or changed his grades, or gave him this amount of money. We didn't. Well, you didn't because you didn't sign him. That's been the reason most NCAA investigations have started. Somebody gets turned in. Yes, you are correct. Yes, the NCAA isn't going to every campus and having every school open up their books from start to finish and all their computer files to hand them over. They are not proactive in that way.
So when the signs were taken away for the competitive advantage, when they didn't have a counter stallions, what changed?
There's nothing wrong with stealing signs. It has nothing to do with
stealing the competitive. If they had such a competitive advantage from these signs when they didn't have the signs,
yes.
What changed?
What do you mean? What changed?
Playing as far as their play on the field.
Well, they suddenly were really good in 2021, as opposed to being fairly mediocre before that.
They were that much better in 2021.
Yeah, they won a Big Ten championship for the first time in 17 years.
Right, but the only game that was like they had seasons where they were 10 wins.
Sure.
So the only difference in that season was they beat Ohio State. That was the one significant difference, and that allowed them to do that. No.
They went 11-1 that season. They were beating teams that they were not beating. They hadn't had an 11-1 season in 15 years.
So in 2000, what were they record in 2016?
10-3.
That was 10 wins, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not saying they didn't ever have any good seasons, but they accomplished more in 2021 than they had in almost 2 decades.
What difference? Like they lost to Michigan State, they beat Ohio State. What other team on that schedule had Michigan struggle with during that time period?
Do we want to start that? Like Jim Harbaugh lost 20-some games in the Big. Wait a minute. They were not winning Big Ten championships before 2021.
They weren't beating Ohio State. That was the reason why they weren't.
No, there were other reasons why they were not winning Big Ten championships besides not beating Ohio State. That is the biggest factor. You're focusing on the couple seasons prior to 2021. Correct.
Yeah, I'm focused on like how they were still like in contention up into 2021. The one thing that really changed was them beating Ohio State, which allowed them to chase all the rest of their goals.
You're focused on the Harbaugh era. Yeah, that's a fair statement.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying. Even so, after that, what changed? They were playing the same. They were doing the same thing they were doing. As far as like the way they were playing, the style that they were playing, the margin of victories that they were winning by, like they were the same team.
They did not lose a game other than that Michigan State game for what, 3 consecutive years in regular season play. They weren't doing that. Forget Ohio State. They weren't doing that against the rest of the Big Ten.
They were beating the rest of the Big Ten.
They were not winning every game except the Ohio State game. Give me one loss season under Harbaugh. They didn't have any of those.
The year 2026. What were they record in 2018?
In the regular season, they were 10-2. They lost to Notre Dame and Ohio State. Then they lost a bowl game.
Okay, that was in the regular season. 2016. What was their record?
Yeah, if you want to cherry pick seasons,
But this is during his era, and it's
picking seasons. What we are both saying is correct. You were pointing out that they were a contender, and then they flipped the switch against Ohio State. I'm pointing out that from 2021 on up until last season, they basically lost to nobody, including Ohio State, and they cannot make that claim before that. 2017, 8-5. They didn't play Ohio State 5 times.
Okay, they was 8-5 this year. They was 8-5 this year. So go ahead.
Yeah, well, this year's not in play.
Right, but keep going. Like, no, I'm just saying as far as how they've been, like 8-5, 10-2. Like they've been in that stretch of like building for those years, like that, and they're on that same trajectory.
Maybe we're stuck
had
on
those
semantics. I don't know, but we can get past this point. But yes, they drastically improved.
See, and that's where we disagree, because I don't see that it was a drastic improvement.
I believe it's a drastic improvement from going top 15 in the country to top 3 in the country. That to me is a drastic improvement.
What do you
mean? That may only be 1 or 2 games, but those are crucial games. That can't be debated. What I just stated right there.
So, now, even in those, they weren't
a 4-8 team. No.
And everything that they. So, what about the coaches that they, Jesse Minter, and them guys? Like, what about those guys being on the staff during those 21-20? And look at their success after that. Did they have a Jesse Minter before that? Did they have a Mike McDonald before that?
What is your point?
They got better coaches along with
a better football team.
Right.
They weren't losing to Wisconsin and Michigan State and a bunch of other teams in the Big Ten.
Right. So and those coaches are still successful. So they could make up those difference in those games over that time period. No, they might not have been consistently beating those teams before that, but when you get a Jesse Mentor or a Mike McDonald, who still are proven to have success.
Did I not start out this conversation by stating, and I don't think that this should have anything to do with the ruling, 0, but in my opinion, they did not win a national championship based on cheating. But that's just my opinion. My opinion should count for nothing. They cheated. That can't be debated.
They broke a rule that was.
They cheated. They didn't flub up on a rule. Like there are many NCAA issues from the past concerning all sorts of programs where they slipped up and they violated a rule here because there was an oversight. No, they conducted a scheme for 2.5 years. That is not just, we missed page 89, paragraph 4. And
okay, so when you say cheating, so if you're a school and you're paying for your athletes, and you have a school that's not paying for their athletes, they're stealing signs. Which one is the bigger competitive advantage? Paying for players?
Care which one is.
So what I'm saying is, if you're in a conference where there's schools paying for players,
you are taking away from the analysis of this situation by bringing up hypothetical situations.
How?
That's exactly what you're doing.
There's documented proof of schools paying for players in the conference.
Yeah. And anyone who has paid for players and it's been brought to the NCAA has been
Has been what?
ruled against.
So when Ohio State got Chase Young, a booster got him tickets, what was the punishment?
You would have to bring to me the proof that occurred.
Okay.
I'm not going
I
to
don't
sit
have
here
that.
and just take your word for it.
No,
Sorry.
I mean it's out there.
Can't do
It's
that.
out. I mean, I listen. I'm not bringing nothing to your attention that's not out there. It's out there. So like these things have been going on for years,
Yeah.
for longer than 3 or 4 years. We talking about over the span of 20, 25 years.
You are missing a big point in this.
What I'm
Paying a
saying is,
player.
if you know that there's schools out there paying for players and you're not participating in that, you need some sort of advantage. If you're not going to participate in the paying for them, you need something to kind of level the playing
So
field.
Michigan cheated because everybody else is cheating. Got it.
No, Michigan cheated to level the playing field.
Yes, exactly.
Right. So, but which one is, if you're doing it over 20 years versus 4 years?
Yeah, that's it. You're right.
That is it.
Got it. Yes.
No.
Yes.
So starting back from Maurice Claret.
16 more years.
So from starting back from Maurice Claret, when he said he got paid more in the UFL than he did in college football. I mean, he got paid more in college football than he did in the UFL. Then we had Terrell Pryor. We had Troy Smith. We had Chase Young. We had all these guys. Like these are consecutive years. Just going back from 2000 to at least 2018.
And Michigan never paid anyone $1.
But what you're saying to me is we can't do that. We can't grab anything that
Charles Woodson has stated otherwise.
What Charles Woodson say?
He has made statements about
when
everybody, including Michigan, paid players.
When? I've never that. Where is that?
It's out there.
I'll look for
Desmond
it. Make sure.
Howard,
I know you get information like that. So whenever you can, please bring that information up. Because what I'm saying to you is out there. Like I'm not saying this like I'm making it up. Like that information is out there. The Maurice Claret statement is out there. It's actually a video recording of it. And then again, Terrell Pryor, we say, oh, they just got
we appreciate your call. We want to talk about this Michigan football decision. That's why we're here, not to talk about what happened 25 years ago.
Well, my point is to make it show why it was
welcome to call my show any day of the year and discuss, unless it's like National Championship Day, and discuss Ohio State or any other school and what they have done in the past. Today, we're talking about this case and the conclusion of this case. I appreciate the call. All right. I am way too kind. Way too kind. That's got to stop. All right. Because we're talking about this case and the conclusion of this case. 364 other days of the year, anyone can call and match up Ohio State and Michigan and their violations of the past, and which were worse. And they cheated, so it's okay if we cheat. Always love that defense. Great. All right. Let's get through the rest of this article here. So again, sign stealing case, Michigan and its coaches, staffers were charged with 6 level 1 violations, which are the most serious. The decision to fine the school heavily but not issue a penalty such as a postseason ban indicates a shift in NCAA enforcement rulings away from postseason prohibitions. That's where I was in making a clear determination, as opposed to what I have seen on the internet all day from particular morons who are trying to equate this decision with past decisions. You cannot do that, because the NCAA has clearly And if it wasn't clear to all of us, they have actually clearly stated that they are and have shifted away from penalizing the wrong people, meaning penalizing these schools going forward for past misconduct or penalizing people that were not involved. And that's an impossible thing to do. And they did a reasonably decent job at doing this. We got Dr. Buckeye coming on here, David Greenshield. David, how are you?
Well, Mark, I have some things to say.
All right, we'll give you the floor, and I'll probably have little to say in return because I've spent way too much time on this ridiculous. They cheated.
Yeah, well, they committed murder. We just robbed the bank, or moral equivalences to defend your cheating is the weakest ground to defend your cheating. You know what I mean? Give the guy credit. He admitted. He said, "Well, we cheated, but they cheated too. So let's just let everybody cheat." Which is, I'm wondering if today has set a precedent on that, Mark. And I'm going to get into that in a second. First of all, to the ground that I wanted to cover, and I'm going to read from the notice that was put out for the NCAA, so I'm not, going ahead and saying anything that's not already been documented. If you've already gotten into this, do pardon me. But, in reading from it, it says here, with Michigan being a repeat violator status coupled with its level 1 aggravated case classification, it is sufficient grounds for a multi-year postseason ban. It is sufficient grounds for a multi-year postseason ban. Did you get to that? You got to that part, Mark?
I did not.
Okay. That's under the penalties part. It is sufficient grounds for a multi-year postseason ban. Okay. Now, scum fans don't want to read that part. Now, the next part is where they want to read, which is, however, the panel has determined that the postseason ban would unfairly penalize student athletes for actions of coaches and staff who are no longer associated with the scum program. Oh, I'm sorry. I mispronounced them. This panel determined a more appropriate penalty is an offsetting financial penalty instead of a 2-year postseason ban. All right, this leads to the obvious question, Mark. And maybe you're going to ask your bromance when you have him on. He was on for 10 minutes today, doing his victory lap. If Jim Harbaugh is still the coach of this program, is this program looking at a postseason ban right now? Because Tony Gerdeman said on his podcast today, that's how he reads that. Is that how you read that?
That if he were.
Yes, still the coach there, they would have a 2-year postseason ban right now.
Well, sure, that's how it has to be read. Yeah.
Okay. So, and by the way,
but that's easy to say in theory. That's easy for them to state that
right.
If this was the situation, we would have ruled differently. I think that the NCAA, and I'll show my tweets here in a second, I think that they made a statement that we want to be as harsh, especially financially, as possible to show the severity of this situation. But if we take away wins and if we take away a championship, we just illegitimized that season and we illegitimize our sport to a certain extent. We can't do that.
Okay. Now, the point being is, I think now they talked about the violators, so they're also talking about Harbaugh and the Stallion. Now, considering that Jim, I think what they basically says is, since we got our pound of flesh out of Harbaugh and the Stallion, because Jim Harbaugh won't be able to coach football until he's 80 or late 70s because of the other violation he got and this 10-year. Yeah, that's 14 years. I think that would put him at 78 years old, if I'm not mistaken, Mark. So, Jim Harbaugh will not be able to coach college football if he gets fired from the Chargers a few years down the road. Now, his brother will probably give him a job because he'll kiss his ass and go get a job from him. So, maybe that's what'll happen to him once he gets fired from the Chargers. So we'll have to see how that works out. But do you think that number one, that's what the NCAA saw? We got our pound of flesh from Jim Harbaugh. He's never going to be able to coach college football until his late 70s. So that's, good enough. And B, bottom line, I think it's fair to say Jim Harbaugh will never coach college football ever again. Is that
Well,
thoughts on both of those things?
They may have some kind of sense of satisfaction in doing that, but we know the practicality of it. And right now, the practicality of it is the consequences are zero, because Jim Harbaugh may coach the Los Angeles Chargers or wherever they are now for the next 6 or 8 years and be well into his late 60s and then pretty much be done with his career. So I think they feel good about that. That makes them contented. But if the practicality of it is that the impact right now is zero and may forever be zero.
Now, I could say this. Harbaugh was looking to get out because they gave him the pay reduction. And, he had disagreements with Ward Manuel. I was speaking about that last night. So that was already known and that was already out there. But it's also plausible to say that any coach that coaches a team to a national championship, you would think would want to build on that success and continue a great run. Why not continue a great run? A case can be made for that, couldn't it?
I'm sorry, run that by me again. I was reading our super chat.
No, it's all right. No problem. Everybody said, and I understood, people saying he left because of the fact that he was forced to take less money and he had differences with the AD and administration and all of that.
Yep.
I get that's why, and, loves the NFL and all that. But a case could also be made, and an equally compelling one, that you stay coaching college football after you win a national championship because you can build on that and get on a run of success and build on this success.
Yeah, but you're starting to conjecture into the hearts and minds of individuals, and I don't do that myself, because the argument could be made that he accomplished what he came to college to accomplish, and specifically to his school to accomplish, and he succeeded. Therefore, he's going to go to the NFL to accomplish what he came up just short a decade earlier.
Okay. So he didn't want to see himself building a Pete Carroll kind of run at USC or something like that.
I don't know.
Okay. I mean,
no idea.
Coaches that win a national championship maybe think about winning another national championship.
Well, you're conjecturing, David.
No.
And I have no issue with that. That's why we're here. Part of
Right.
the reason why we're here is to conjecture. I have no, and you know what? Jim Harbaugh would never answer that question. That guy, first of all, is so inarticulate to express himself. We wouldn't even know what he was saying if posed that question. And secondly, he wouldn't answer that question anyway, because he would spin it toward whatever his current job situation was. So we would never know that. So I don't know if he would rather be a collegiate legend or have this distinction of the Jimmy Johnson, Pete Carroll classification in both sports. I don't know.
Well, he evades questions because he doesn't have the balls to answer the questions or the guts to answer the questions. And he's been coached up by attorneys not to answer questions. But, he's also gutless too, which is why he left, because he knew. And by the way, it's also documented, if I'm not mistaken, Mark, in the contract negotiations after the 23 season, he was negotiating with them to have in their contracts outs to if they got hit with certain penalties. If I'm not mistaken. Is that a fact, Mark?
Yes.
I don't know if you've confirmed that with your sources up there.
Well, I can't confirm that as fact, but I know that I've seen that in a lot of different reputable publications and sources. Yes.
Okay. All right. So he was going to get put into his contract if he stuck around. I want outs to where if we get hit with penalties here, I can get covered, or, So, okay. So we're at that point with that whole situation. Obviously, the Stallions fell on the sword too. He got 8 years. We know that, that situation. By the way, is the Mark Rogers booking department anywhere closer to having the Stallions on the program, or where are we at with that?
Hopefully not. I'll have somebody fill in for me that night. They can talk to him.
Okay.
I'm about done with this.
Okay.
It's so annoying.
Hey, this is your largest fan base, Mark. I don't know. Maybe they want to hear from a guy that's eventually going to be a hero that they're going to build statues to up next to Bo Schembechler up there. So
it would be an intriguing conversation. So I would not turn it down. I should correct that. I shy away from no interview from anyone. I'll talk to anyone at any time in regards to, I'm not, this whole situation just annoys me beyond belief. It's just, they cheated. There's only one reason
Sure.
you cheat, and the coaching staff had to know it.
Well, and I'm going to go back to the Harbaugh situation. Harbaugh has never articulated what the Stallions' role was there. Now, to be fair, he lawyered up. And like I said, he's gutless and is not willing to answer the questions. And his lawyers probably instructed him not to do so. But even if you put him under truth serum, I'd be interested to hear what he has to say. And he should know what a guy, because the Stallions was paid $50,000 a year. That's also a fact, correct? Yeah,
Yes.
And he was on their payroll.
Mhm.
We've also established that it was factually accurate that he was on the sidelines in the game in 2022, telling Minter and Moore the plays. Okay. So we are led to believe that Jim Harbaugh doesn't know the role of a guy who's on his staff, or can't articulate the role of Connor Stallions, of a man that's earning $50,000 and on his staff, and it was on the sideline of the most important game of the 2022 season in Columbus, telling his offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator plays, but yet he cannot articulate what his role in the program is. Does that pass the smell test, Mark?
No, it never has.
Yeah, Scum fans are going to run over that, and I get it. You know what I mean? Listen, I understand why they want to evade these questions, because they can't answer them. So what we're left with here, Mark, and I got a couple of other things I want to add, is does this open the floodgates to other programs to just, the one caller was making the point about every program cheats. They all cheat, Mark. What I've been hearing today on a lot of Ohio State podcasts about this is, doesn't this just open the floodgates? Why doesn't everybody just do it? Let's just cheat and cheat and cheat. And you know what? The NCAA is a worthless organization. And if we're a big enough program, we'll get away with it.
Yeah. Did they get away with it, though? Do you really want to have that label put on you for as long as we play football and keep records, that fans will talk about how Michigan cheated in 2023. Anytime this championship is brought up in the future, people will talk about that. That will be the one thing that people will remember beyond anything else about that season and that championship will be that they cheated.
The only power they've really ever had to punish is scholarship reductions, which they did do some, what did they say, roster reductions here? Did you read that part, Mark?
I did not get to that.
Yes. They did talk about roster reductions in here, because obviously they're talking about it from a roster standpoint rather than scholarship reductions, because of the way college football is structured nowadays, because you're getting players out of the portal, and it's not always about scholarships. Now, by the way, I'll read the however part. I got to the part where they had said, this is the part where the Scum fans want to hear. However, the panel has determined that a postseason ban would unfairly penalize student athletes for actions of coaches and staff who are no longer associated with the program. Thus, the panel has determined a more appropriate penalty is an offsetting financial penalty instead of the 2-year postseason ban. Similarly, the NCAA membership has shifted from scholarship limits to roster spots. That's what I just mentioned a second ago. The NCAA membership has not yet determined whether roster deductions will replace scholarship reductions as the core penalty. That's what I was trying to say just a second ago, Mark.
Yeah, well, it's just an update to current conditions in college football.
Right.
From scholarships to roster spots.
Yeah, and they basically said that the level 1 aggregated scholarship reductions plus converted the penalty to the financial equivalent, which is, I'm just going to say it. I think the NCAA that Scum was able to bribe the NCAA away from a 2-year postseason ban with all the dough they gave them.
Well, again, that's conjecture, but it's reasonable conjecture, so I have no issue with that. Just like you had reasonable conjecture on Jim Harbaugh, it's reasonable to think that they did that because to talk about financial equivalence, we don't know what financial equivalent is to the reputation of winning a national championship or not winning a national championship. There is no financial equivalent to that. There is no financial equivalent to vacated wins. Yes,
Right.
a postseason ban, you can equate it to, and conjecture that they may have made the playoffs, therefore they would have made X number of dollars, but there is no financial equivalent to the black mark that's put on a program that had a championship taken away and cannot go to postseason play for 2 years. There is no financial equivalent in the world of college football. No.
Right.
Don't
So
agree.
what I would say here, I just think that's the long and short of it. I think they bribed the NCAA. They basically said, okay, we're going to give you X amount of, and by the way, the people on the Team Up North podcast that's on your channel, John D. and I forget the other gentleman's name that runs
TK.
that. Yeah, TK had mentioned that they thought at the time when we discussed this in the past that the NCAA would give them the largest fine in the history of the NCAA. And I think the long and short of it is that we can just pay enough money here, whereas to avoid the postseason ban. So that's where I come down on that. I guess from an Ohio State perspective, I'm going to ask this question, Mark. It's led a lot of people to make a comparison. I don't know if you've made the comparison to this in the 2012 Tattoo Gate situation.
Good Lord, there's no comparison. Oh,
Well,
my word.
yeah, I wonder if Scum fans, what's interesting is a few different points here, Mark. Number one, we got vacated wins for those tattoos. Number two, we lost a chance to play for a national championship in 2012. And, I would also point out that Jim Tressel was already gone. Luke Fickell had taken the job in 2011 and then Urban in 2012. So, Ohio State let its coach go, So, and Ohio State, chose to take the bowl ban and did that. Again, they should have done it, obviously, in 2011. If they'd have done it, they'd have been playing for a national championship in 2012. But, doesn't it just make it seem...
David, you're going to get my blood boiling by bringing up that season, but you didn't need to, because that season's been running through and that situation's been running through my head over the course of this live stream and reading this mess, because there is no comparison between these two situations for these reasons. As you just stated, actually, the NCAA wrecked 3 Ohio State football seasons. 2010 by vacating the wins in the Sugar Bowl championship and the Big Ten championship.
Right.
That was rightfully won. 2011 by suspending all those players, their 5 best offensive players,
right?
Quarterback, best running back, best wide receiver, best left tackle, and ruining that season. And then 2012, despite a 12-0 record, not being able to compete in postseason play. So the NCAA ruined 3 seasons for players who they didn't cheat. There's a difference between cheating and violating rules.
Mm-hmm.
Cheating is to gain an unfair competitive advantage. Did they do that? No, they already won. They already accomplished. They already won all those games. They already beat the hell out of Michigan umpteen years in a row. They already won Big Ten championships. They already won Rose Bowls and Sugar Bowls. They won all that. Then they violated NCAA rules. They didn't cheat to win. They already won. Therefore, the just penalty there would have been to suspend the players.
Right.
And Tressel, unfortunately, he did prove loyal to the players, but he covered it up. But he was already, as you stated, gone. So that was a hit that the program took.
Yes.
Anyway, and suspend the players. So that should have been isolated to 2011, suspend those 5 players. Done. That's the ruling.
Yeah, and I found it interesting. I was on the podcast up there, and they were all like, "Well, yeah, now you got they went too far with that." By the way, are we dealing with the same NCAA that we had in 2012 that we have now? Did some metamorphosis happen to the NCAA between 2012 and now that changed it to where they don't want to give out punishments like that anymore?
I don't know if that's a facetious question or not. I think it's a bit mixed there.
Well,
There are
but I
different
mean,
people on the panel.
well, sure. But you just admitted it was an apple to. I mean, there is no comparison
Yeah,
between the
there's
two situations. So you had an NCAA with teeth that was willing to dole out a punishment before, but now you don't have an NCAA with teeth that's willing to dole out any kind of a punishment with this situation.
And that was an unfair, misdirected, misguided punishment. Again, and anyone that wants to debate me on that, I am fully locked and loaded to debate that topic because
Hey,
I
it's your
don't
largest fan base. You'll probably be hearing from them.
anyone who, I don't care how much you hate the Ohio State University and its football program, if you have one ethical bone in your body, one reasonable bone in your body, you understand what I just stated. The players were not cheating to win. The winning had already occurred. They did nothing. They weren't eligible based on cheating. They weren't paid. Grades weren't affected. There was no cheating done to impact the game. They
Right.
broke a rule after the aftermath of winning all that. And sure, they broke a rule, penalize them, suspend them.
Right.
That's all that should have been.
Yeah, I do wonder whether this, like I said, I wonder, with the college football world that we're living. First of all, we're already living in a Wild West kind of college football world, as we talked about, Mark. I wonder with us now, them setting a kind of precedent that they're not willing to punish a situation like this, whether more programs are compelled to just let loose, so to speak.
Well, again,
I don't know.
each individual program would have to determine whether they want to suffer the public shame that Michigan has suffered through all of this. And I know to a lot of rival fan bases, they feel as though this is unjust. But believe me, I see it all over the place from fans that have no connection to Michigan one way or the other, who
Right.
throw out the cheating term all over the place. So they're going to have to live with this forever. And
Well,
and the other part in it is determining, is it worth that $20 or $30 million?
Well, you know what, Mark, they sold their soul because they were an irrelevant program for a long period of time. They hadn't won anything. They fired a few coaches, and they were looking at a coach. And by the way, some scum fans have admitted to me that Harbaugh ducked the 2020 game, and I still believe COVID saved his job. And if he loses the game in 2020, I do believe he's fired. And, when you haven't had a level of success for a long period of time and you're getting beat down by your rival for a long period of time, yes, you sell your soul to turn things around, because this wasn't your largest fan base in 2021 and 2020, Mark. It wasn't. It became your largest fan base because they started to cheat and became relevant again. It helped them become relevant again because there's a record before Stallions and then there's a record after Stallions, Mark. There just is.
Yeah, that's what I was explaining to a previous caller. Absolutely. Jim Harbaugh did finish 2-5 against Ohio State. So I know that there have been comments made about whether a statue should be built to him in Ann Arbor. And if that's their standard, then I guess so.
Well, they keep on moving the standards, Mark, you know what I mean, for success up there, considering, what's going on up there. But I digress. Will you be having any more folks, any of your contacts from up there to talk further about this, Mark, or is this all talked out?
Well, I hope not to say another word on this channel until Monday night. I did not intend on doing this. So I'm away for the weekend. And yes, so
I will say, I think that, the NCAA took forever on this, and, so be it. And we get to this, huh, Mark? So.
Yeah, well, there was not going to be a conclusion to this that was going to sit well with me. And I don't say that from an Ohio State perspective. I just say that because none of these situations involving the NCAA, and it's not just a knock on the NCAA. You just can't right a wrong, and you can't wield justice that is perfectly defined. It's impossible to do.
Right. All right, Mark. Well, you're going to evening shows come the 18th, right?
Yeah, I may regret that, but we'll see.
Well, that's going to be fun, Mark. I will, because of my schedule, be able to check in with you from time to time.
Sounds good, David.
All right, take care now.
See you soon. Thanks for calling.
Bye-bye.
All right, final call. Welcome into the Voice of College Football.
Hey, Mark, you hear me all right?
Yes, I got you. How are you?
All right. Thanks for taking my call. Keep it short. I know you're getting to the end of your show here, so I won't hold you too long. I have a few quick things. For starters, and I'll move on to the next one if you already talked about this. Have you ever seen a precedent where a school gets to choose when its coach gets to be suspended during the season after they are levied to have a suspension?
That's
Because
a good point.
He's allowed. I've never seen that.
Yeah. That's a good point.
And so I don't know. That's something to look at. I don't think it's ever happened. I don't think anybody's just been allowed to pick and choose and wait on. They suspend their own suspension essentially. Just do whatever they want. So that's interesting. I don't think there is, but I'd be interested to see if there is. So that's the number one thing. Number two, what are your thoughts on them deciding that we are not going to punish players in the future who were innocent? Because I think that's a good move. As an Ohio State fan, I hate that it starts with Michigan, right? as someone who's petty, right?
Yeah.
Like,
that has been something that myself and others have been stating for years and years and years. And it's been plain to anyone who follows the sport that there's been an unfair component to these NCAA rulings, and that's punishing programs into the future, especially in the past, because we did not have the advent of the transfer portal and it was not in play the way it is now. Now, an argument could be made now that, well, if said player doesn't want to stick with said university during this 2-year postseason ban, all they have to do is jump in the transfer portal and go somewhere else. Well, that was not the case in the past. Those players were tied to that program and had to see it through. And unfortunately, there were hundreds, if not thousands of players through the course of college football history who have been tied to programs in which they did absolutely nothing wrong and had to stay with a program that was placed on probation and couldn't play in bowl games and had to play with inferior teams because of scholarship reductions.
Yeah, so I'm glad, for example, a guy like Underwood shouldn't be punished for what Michigan did. He wasn't there. He's not implicated. Yes. I'm glad for.
I totally agree, but my only counterpoint is that he could jump in the transfer portal today and move on.
He could. You're right. But I guess just the principle of it, right? That's an integrity thing. Something Michigan fans claim as Michigan men that they have. Maybe they can learn a thing or two. But I just, it's tough, man. And so one last thing I have on this. What are the implications of this? And I know you probably can't answer this question, but in the past, in my opinion, it looks like the NCAA has said that they're stating a precedent now that it is not right for them to punish players that are currently at an institution for past offenses of another. However, recently we've had, obviously we have Tattoo-gate, right? We see that. You have Mizzou, you have other people that are essentially like other schools where they've punished the players in the future. And I don't know if you can answer this question, but does this open the NCAA up to civil liability? Like say for like a Braxton Miller who could say that, put a monetary amount to things that like they were punished for essentially, like they had certain things taken away from them essentially by the NCAA. The NCAA is now saying is not right. Does that open up the liability?
So
civil
legal people out there, certainly forgive me here if I'm overstepping or misconstruing things or crossing lines, but certainly we have just discovered during this NIL situation and what has been grandfathered in regards to revenue, that only went back 10 years. I would think that there is a a term limitation of sorts in regards to how far back athletes could go to sue the NCAA. So we're talking, 15 years ago at this point. So I don't know that is plausible.
Yeah, I don't know if we can answer that question. It's just thought I had.
And then also the NCAA could just claim that those were the current rules and current standards, and it was deemed to be legal at the time for them to enforce those. So they've simply changed their mode of operation and their approach.
All right. So thank you for taking my call. One last thing. 2012 Ohio State national champions. They earned it. They got it taken away. We might as well claim it. What's the NCAA going to do about it? Thanks for taking my call, Mark. Have a good night.
Very good. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah, that's an interesting one there, because I think that from a football standpoint is a stretch, because Ohio State did not play in a Big Ten championship game, and they would have had to play a postseason game, obviously, a BCS championship game against Notre Dame. So I am rewriting history to a certain extent, as some of you know, going through and revisiting all the national championships, and we've got the live streams there, and that's a difficult one to tackle because that team was not given their due right of competing for a national championship in 2012. But to say that they are the national champions, or for them to claim it based on having the absence of two games that would be the most important two games of the season, is kind of a difficult one to go on there. But at the same time, Notre Dame was 12-0 going into the national championship game against Bama, and that's the same record Ohio State had. So Notre Dame did not have to play a conference championship game, and they still got to participate in the BCS championship game. So put one in Ohio State's column there. So I have no issue with any Ohio State fan who says claim the 2012 national championship. It's a difficult one for me to pull the trigger on, but I just came up with another reason why that is a more valid claim than I considered just a few seconds ago. And I want to go back to the comment made by Mike. Thank you for the contribution. We appreciate you, Mike. Jerry Sandusky, behavior is now allowed under the new NCAA. Alex Wood and Alex Wood, Matt Weiss are heroes. Mike, we appreciate your contribution and your loyalty, sir. And again, Daniel being a member for a long, long time here at the Voice of College Football. All right, folks, we could go on and on with this, but our Michigan channel is up and running, I believe, with the live stream on this. And yes, it's going to be biased, of course, and they would admit to that as well. Hopefully reasonable, but they are biased. Of course they are. We all are. So we leave you with this. Cheating is cheating, and no one will ever know how the 2023 season or 21 or 22 would have concluded had Michigan not cheated. No one can make that statement. If they do, they are a fool. All right, we will see you with the new show that we are launching with a revised time. That's going to be starting this Monday at 10 p.m. Eastern time. And so we will see you all then, as I hurriedly look for the banner and cannot find it. But 10 p.m. Eastern time starting this Monday for the College Football Show late night. We will see you then. Head on over to the Michigan channel, and you can discuss even further Michigan cheating scandal and the NCAA conclusion. College football is even more exciting when you've got some action on the line, and the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread, and I've got a 40-plus year track record. 11-0 in the college football playoff for me last year against the money line, 8-3 against the spread. And I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill of Wager Talk is our ace in the hole, show stopper. 7 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick. 28-12 against the spread the last 3 years. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Corey Bratta, Matt Zemek, and Steve Dace. Check out those numbers. Become a YouTube or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and then select a betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2025 a winner now.